On April 13, 2024, the night sky over Israel filled with over 300 incoming projectiles. By morning, Western media declared victory. Israel intercepted 99% of the threats. The Iron Dome worked. The aero systems performed flawlessly. The U.S. Navy fired SM-3 missiles from destroyers in the Mediterranean and Red Sea. Coalition forces from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UK, and France contributed to the defensive shield. The headlines celebrated technological triumph. The accountants saw something different. Israel and its allies spent somewhere between $1.3 billion and $2.1 billion in a single night of defense. Iran spent an estimated $80 million to $150 million on the entire offensive package. The math works out to a cost ratio between 10-1 and 15-1 in favor of the attacker. You have been taught to measure military success by territory captured, casualties inflicted, and political objectives achieved. These metrics made sense in the wars your grandfather fought. They mean nothing in the conflicts you will fund with your tax dollars for the next 30 years. The new calculus of warfare operates on a different equation entirely. The side firing the weapons does not need to win. The side intercepting the weapons needs to avoid bankruptcy. This is the cost-exchange ratio problem. Military strategists at the Pentagon have studied it since the 1960s. Defense contractors have profited from it for decades. Your government has failed to solve it. The mathematics of modern missile defense contain a structural flaw baked into the physics and economics of the systems themselves. A country with a GDP of $400 billion is using $3 million interceptors to shoot down $50,000 drones from a country with a GDP of $1.7 trillion. The wealthy nation bleeds money. The poorer nation bleeds nothing. This is engineered attrition. The bottleneck sits in the production lines of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, not in the factories of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Welcome to Rashi Historical. We follow the money, trace the power, and expose the history they never taught you in school. The cost-exchange ratio problem will determine the outcome of the next major war before the first shot gets fired. It will shape your national debt. It will influence what your government chooses to defend and what it chooses to abandon. It will decide whether the arsenal of democracy remains solvent or goes broke protecting itself from swarms of cheap drones. The numbers do not care about your politics. The numbers do not respect your alliances. The numbers run the same calculation every time. Offense is cheap, defense is expensive, and the ledger always balances. The year is 1944. Nazi Germany begins launching V-1 flying bombs at London. The British scramble to respond. The V-1 was a crude weapon by modern standards. It flew at 400 miles per hour. It carried a 1,800-pound warhead. It used a simple pulse jet engine and an equally simple guidance system consisting of a gyroscope and a barometric altimeter. The Germans built these weapons using forced labor, basic materials, and production methods designed for mass output. Each V-1 cost Germany approximately $3,000 in 1944 dollars. Adjusted for inflation, this translates to roughly $50,000 in modern currency. The Germans launched nearly 10,000 of them in England between June 1944 and March 1945. The British response required extraordinary resources. Anti-aircraft batteries ringed London. Barrage balloon fields blocked low-altitude approaches. Fighter squadrons dedicated their sorties to V-1 interception. Radar networks tracked incoming weapons. Command and control systems coordinated the defensive effort. British government wartime records housed in the UK National Archives document the economic calculus. Each successful interception attempt cost an estimated $30,000 in 1944 dollars. The ratio stood at 10.1 in favor of the attacker. The British won this exchange in historical terms. They absorbed the V-1 campaign. London survived. The war ended with Allied victory. The economic math told a different story. Germany spent approximately $30 million launching V-1s at England. Britain spent over $300 million defending against them. The defender paid 10 times what the attacker paid. A nation with greater industrial capacity and stronger finances absorbed this cost differential. A nation without those advantages would have faced impossible choices. The V-2 made the equation worse. This ballistic missile traveled at speeds exceeding 3,500 miles per hour. No defensive system in 1944 or 1945 possessed the capability to intercept it. The British had no answer except to endure the attacks and target the launch sites. Each V-2 cost Germany roughly $40,000 to produce. The British spent millions attempting to locate and destroy mobile launch platforms. The cost-exchange ratio shifted further toward the attacker. Military planners in Washington and Moscow absorbed these lessons after the war ended. Both superpowers recruited German rocket scientists. Both superpowers invested in offensive missile programs. Both superpowers understood the economic arithmetic of attack versus defense. The Cold War arms race reflected this understanding. The United States and Soviet Union built thousands of nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles. Neither side invested equivalent resources in missile defense. The reason was simple mathematics. Defending against a mass nuclear strike would cost more than any nation could afford. The doctrine of mutual assured destruction emerged from economic calculation as much as strategic theory. President Reagan challenged this consensus with the Strategic Defense Initiative in 1983. He proposed a space-based shield capable of intercepting Soviet missiles. Scientists and economists raised immediate objections. The Soviets needed to spend an estimated $1 million per additional warhead. The Americans needed to spend an estimated $100 million per additional interceptor. The ratio had grown to 100.1. The Strategic Defense Initiative never achieved its stated goals. The Soviet Union collapsed for reasons unrelated to missile defense. The cost-exchange ratio problem remained unsolved. The Congressional Research Service publishes detailed reports on U.S. missile defense systems. Report RL 33745, updated regularly between 2023 and 2024, contains the numbers your representatives rarely discuss in public. The Patriot missile system serves as the workhorse of American theater missile defense. Raytheon manufactures the PAC-3 interceptor used against ballistic missile threats. Each PAC-3 missile costs between $3 million and $4 million. The launcher, radar, command post, and support equipment add billions more to total system costs. Training, maintenance, and operational expenses compound the investment. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System provides upper-tier protection against medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Lockheed Martin produces the THAAD interceptor. Each interceptor costs between $12 million and $15 million. A single THAAD battery costs approximately $1 billion when you include the radar, launchers, and fire control equipment. The Aegis ballistic missile defense system operates from U.S. Navy destroyers and cruisers. The SM-3 Block 2IA interceptor costs approximately $36 million per round. The SM-3 Block IB costs between $10 million and $15 million. These interceptors protect against intermediate-range ballistic missiles and certain intercontinental threats in their mid-course phase. Israel operates its own layered defense architecture, built with significant American financial support. Iron Dome protects against short-range rockets and artillery shells. Rafael Advanced Defense Systems manufactures the Tamir interceptor. Each Tamir costs between $40,000 and $50,000. This represents the cheapest interceptor in any modern layered defense system. The United States has provided over $3 billion in Iron Dome funding since 2011. David's Sling addresses medium-range threats, including cruise missiles and large rockets. Stunner interceptors cost approximately $1 million each. The system became operational in 2017 and has seen limited combat use. The Arrow system intercepts ballistic missiles at high altitudes outside the atmosphere. Arrow 2 interceptors cost approximately $2 million each. Arrow 3 interceptors, designed for exoatmospheric interception of longer-range threats, cost approximately $3 million each. The RAND Corporation published a comprehensive study in 2019 titled The Cost of Ballistic Missile Defense. Researchers analyzed decades of data on offensive and defensive system costs. Their findings confirm the historical pattern. Defending against ballistic missiles costs between 3 and 10 times more than developing offensive capability. This ratio has remained stable since the 1960s, despite enormous technological advances. The fundamental physics of the problem favor the attacker. An offensive missile needs to fly from point A to point B. It follows a predictable ballistic trajectory. Its designers optimize for range, payload, and reliability. Manufacturing focuses on cost reduction and mass production. A defensive interceptor needs to detect, track, and destroy an incoming threat traveling at extreme speeds. It requires sophisticated sensors, guidance systems, and propulsion. It must maneuver with precision measured in centimeters when closing velocities exceed 10 kilometers per second. Manufacturing requires tolerances measured in micrometers. The physics create the cost differential. The economics make the problem worse. Offensive missiles benefit from economies of scale. A country produces thousands of them using standardized components and assembly line methods. Unit costs decrease as production volume increases. Defensive interceptors require precision manufacturing with extensive quality control. Production volumes remain limited by demand and budget constraints. Unit costs remain high because the market never reaches the scale necessary for significant cost reduction. The infrastructure costs compound the disparity. An offensive missile requires a launcher, which varies from a simple truck to a silo. A defensive system requires radars, sensors, command and control networks, communications, infrastructure, trained operators, maintenance facilities, and integration with broader military systems. Iran has invested in the cheap side of this equation. The United States and Israel have invested in the expensive side. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force operates Iran's missile and drone programs. Western intelligence agencies, defense industry analysts, and open-source researchers have spent decades estimating Iranian production costs. Jane's Defense Weekly and the International Institute for Strategic Studies provide the most credible publicly available assessments. Their estimates draw from satellite imagery of production facilities, analysis of captured or crashed weapons, defector interviews, and technical reverse engineering. The Shahed 136 kamikaze drone has become the signature weapon of Iranian asymmetric warfare. This Delta-Wing unmanned aerial vehicle carries a 40-kilogram warhead. It uses a small Iranian-manufactured engine. It navigates using GPS and inertial guidance. It has a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers. Production cost estimates for the Shahed 136 range from $20,000 to $50,000 per unit. The cost differential between a Shahed 136 and the systems used to intercept it defines modern asymmetric warfare. A Patriot PASI-3 missile costing $4 million, intercepting a Shahed 136 costing $30,000 creates a cost exchange ratio of 133.1 in favor of the attacker. The mathematics make no strategic sense. Yet this scenario has occurred repeatedly over Ukrainian airspace. An Iron Dome Tamir interceptor costing $50,000 against a Shahed 136 costing $30,000 represents a more favorable ratio of approximately 1.791. The economics become sustainable at this level. Iron Dome was designed for exactly this threat environment. The problem emerges when the attacker mixes weapon types. Iran does not launch Shahed drones alone. Iranian doctrine combines drones with cruise missiles and ballistic missiles in coordinated salvos designed to saturate defensive systems and exploit the cost asymmetry. The Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missile costs between $100,000 and $300,000 per unit. Iran has produced hundreds of these weapons and transferred variants to Hezbollah and other proxy forces. Intercepting a Fateh 110 with an Arrow 2 missile costing $2 million creates a cost ratio between 7:1 and 20:1 in favor of the attacker. Iranian cruise missiles present similar economics. The Pave cruise missile, with an estimated range of 1,650 kilometers, costs an estimated $200,000 to $500,000 per unit. Intercepting cruise missiles requires either expensive surface-to-air systems or manned aircraft sorties with their own significant operational costs. The Iranian production model exploits several structural advantages. Labor costs in Iran are a fraction of Western equivalents. Iranian defense workers earn monthly salaries measured in hundreds of dollars. American defense workers earn monthly salaries measured in thousands of dollars. This differential compounds across every stage of production. Iranian supply chains operate domestically with minimal reliance on imported components for their indigenous systems. Western sanctions forced Iran to develop domestic alternatives for electronics, propulsion systems, and guidance components. This self-sufficiency reduces costs and eliminates supply chain vulnerabilities. Iranian quality standards differ from Western requirements. American and Israeli weapons must meet specifications designed for reliability rates exceeding 95%. Iranian weapons accept higher failure rates in exchange for lower unit costs and higher production volumes. A doctrine built on saturation attacks does not require every weapon to function perfectly. It requires enough weapons to overwhelm defenses. The IRGC operates production facilities across Iran with deliberate geographic dispersion. Hardened underground factories, distributed manufacturing, and redundant supply chains make the production infrastructure resistant to precision strikes. Destroying Iranian missile production would require a sustained air campaign far beyond anything currently contemplated. Iranian procurement officials have stated publicly and repeatedly their intent to exploit the cost exchange ratio. They understand the mathematics. They have structured their entire force development strategy around economic attrition of their adversaries. On the evening of April 13, 2024, Iran launched its first direct military attack on Israeli territory in the history of the Islamic Republic. The operation came in response to an Israeli airstrike on an Iranian diplomatic compound in Damascus 2 weeks earlier. The attack composition reflected deliberate tactical planning designed to test Israeli defenses across multiple threat axes and altitude bands. Iran launched approximately 170 Shahed series drones. These weapons departed Iranian territory hours before the ballistic missiles. Their slow flight speed of approximately 185 kilometers per hour meant they would arrive at Israeli airspace at roughly the same time as the faster weapons launched later. Iran launched approximately 30 cruise missiles. These weapons traveled at subsonic speeds along low-altitude flight paths designed to evade radar detection. Iran launched approximately 120 ballistic missiles. These included Ahmad, Ghadar, and Khaybar-Shikan variants with ranges sufficient to reach Israeli territory directly from Iranian soil. The defensive response involved Israeli systems, American forces, British aircraft, French assets, and regional partners including Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Israeli Air Force F-35I Adir fighters engaged Shahed drones over Jordanian airspace before they reached Israeli territory. Each sortie consumed jet fuel, maintenance hours, and pilot fatigue. The operational costs of fighter interception are difficult to calculate precisely, but exceed $50,000 per flight hour for advanced aircraft. Iron Dome batteries engage drones and cruise missiles approaching protected areas. The Israeli Defense Forces have not released official figures on Tamir expenditure during the attack. Open source analysts estimate between 100 and 200 Tamir interceptors were fired. At $50,000 per interceptor, this translates to $5 million to $10 million in Iron Dome costs alone. David's sling batteries engage cruise missiles and possibly some drones. Interceptor expenditure estimates range from 20 to 50 stunner missiles. At $1 million per interceptor, this adds $20 million to $50 million. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 batteries engage the ballistic missile threats. This marked the first combat use of Arrow 3 interceptors. Estimates suggest between 15 and 30 Arrow interceptors were fired. At $2 million to $3 million per interceptor, this adds $30 million to $90 million U.S. Navy destroyers. In the Eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea fired SM-3 interceptors at Iranian ballistic missiles during their mid-course flight phase. The exact number of SM-3 rounds expended remains classified. Open source estimates suggest between 4 and 12 missiles. At $10 million to $36 million per interceptor, depending on variant, this adds $40 million to $430 million Patriot batteries operated by U.S. forces in the region and possibly by Gulf state allies engaged additional threats. Expenditure estimates range from 5 to 20 PAC-3 missiles. At $3 million to $4 million per interceptor, this adds $15 million to $80 million. British Royal Air Force Typhoon fighters engaged Shahed drones over Jordanian and Syrian airspace. French aircraft participated as well. Coalition aircraft sortie costs add tens of millions more to the total. The combined defensive expenditure for the night of April 13 to 14, 2024, ranged from a conservative estimate of $1.3 billion to an upper estimate of $2.1 billion. Iranian offensive expenditure for the entire attack package is estimated at $80 million to $150 million. The cost-exchange ratio ranged from 10-1 to 15-1 in favor of Iran. Israeli officials declared the defensive operation a success. They were correct in military terms. Only one serious injury occurred on Israeli soil. Air defense systems intercepted 99% of incoming threats. Iranian weapons caused minimal damage. The economic assessment tells a different story. Iran demonstrated the capability to force Israel and its allies to expend over $1 billion in a single night. Iran possesses the production capacity to repeat this attack multiple times per year. Israel and the United States do not possess the interceptor inventories or production capacity to sustain this exchange rate indefinitely. Raytheon produces approximately 500 Patriot missiles per year across all variants and customers. Lockheed Martin produces approximately 48 THAAD interceptors per year. Rafael produces Tamir interceptors at classified rates estimated in the hundreds per year. A sustained campaign of Iranian missile and drone attacks at the April 2024 scale would deplete Israeli and American interceptor stockpiles within months. Replenishment would require years at current production rates. The April 2024 attack was not an anomaly. The cost-exchange ratio it demonstrated fits a documented historical pattern stretching back to the origins of guided weapons. German V weapons against Britain showed a 10.1 cost ratio favoring the attacker. Soviet calculations during the Cold War showed ratios between 10-1 and 100-1 favoring offensive nuclear forces over theoretical defenses. Iraqi Scud attacks during the 1991 Gulf War revealed similar dynamics. Patriot batteries expended millions of dollars in interceptors against missiles costing a fraction of the defensive response. Hamas rocket attacks against Israel over 2 decades have sustained the pattern. Palestinian rockets using commercial components and simple designs cost between $300 and $800 per unit. Iron Dome Tamir interceptors cost $50,000 each. Each successful interception costs Israel 60 to 150 times what Hamas spent on the rocket. The 2006 Lebanon War demonstrated the challenge at scale. Hezbollah fired approximately 4,000 rockets at Israel over 34 days. Israeli defenses at the time lacked the capacity to intercept more than a small fraction. The experience drove accelerated Iron Dome development and deployment. Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia between 2015 and 2023 extended the pattern to Gulf state defenders. Saudi forces expended Patriot missiles against drones and cruise missiles, costing fractions of the interceptor price. The mathematics drained Saudi military budgets without eliminating the threat. Russian cruise missile and drone attacks against Ukraine from 2022 to present have generated the most extensive data set on cost exchange ratios in modern warfare. Ukraine has received billions of dollars in Western air defense systems. Russia has launched thousands of Shahed pattern drones manufactured in Iran and assembled in Russia under license, along with cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Ukrainian forces have achieved high interception rates during concentrated attacks. The cost of this success has strained Western defense industrial capacity. Patriot missiles, NASAMS, interceptors, and other Western systems flow to Ukraine faster than manufacturers produce replacements. The pattern holds across 7 decades, multiple conflict zones, and dozens of weapon system combinations. The attacker maintains a cost advantage measured in multiples. The defender faces economic attrition regardless of military success. The fiscal year 2024 Missile Defense Agency budget totals $29.3 billion. This figure represents the largest single investment in missile defense in American history. It funds research, development, production, and operations for the full range of U.S. defensive systems. This budget exists within a strategic context defined by 3 simultaneous challenges. North Korea possesses an estimated 50 to 70 nuclear warheads and intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the American homeland. Defending against a North Korean strike requires ground-based mid-course defense interceptors stationed in Alaska and California. Each GBI costs approximately $75 million to $100 million. The United States currently deploys 44 interceptors against a potential threat of hundreds of warheads if North Korea continues its expansion. China fields approximately 500 nuclear warheads with plans to expand to over 1,000 by 2030. Chinese intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and emerging hypersonic glide vehicles present threats no current American system reliably counters. The cost of building a defense against the full Chinese arsenal would exceed $1 trillion by conservative estimates. Iran and its proxy network present the theater-level threat demonstrated in April 2024. Defending American forces, regional allies, and forward bases requires Patriot, THAAD, Aegis, and emerging systems, in quantities far exceeding current inventories. The $29.3 billion annual budget cannot address all 3 challenges simultaneously. Choices must be made. Your elected officials rarely explain these choices to you. The mathematics force decisions about what to defend and what to leave vulnerable. The defense industrial base presents its own constraints. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and other contractors operate production lines at capacity. Expanding capacity requires years of investment in facilities, workforce training, and supply chain development. The skilled labor to manufacture precision interceptors does not appear on demand. The April 2024 Iran attack consumed interceptors, equivalent to months of production. A sustained conflict would create shortages within weeks. Allied nations, depending on American systems, would face competition for limited production slots. The Department of Defense has begun investing in alternative approaches designed to improve the cost-exchange ratio. Directed energy weapons, including lasers and high-powered microwaves, offer the theoretical promise of unlimited magazines at minimal cost per shot. A laser system requires electricity rather than physical interceptors. Each engagement costs dollars rather than millions of dollars. They face their own physics challenges, including atmospheric interference, power generation requirements, and thermal management. The promise of cheap interception has not yet translated into fielded capability. Autonomous drone swarms represent another potential counter to the cost asymmetry. Small interceptor drones costing thousands of dollars per unit could engage enemy drones at favorable cost ratios. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency funds multiple programs exploring this concept. The challenge lies in the timeline. Iranian production of Shahed drones continues today. American counter-drone systems exist in prototype form. The gap between threat and solution spans years. Electronic warfare offers non-kinetic approaches to the problem. Jamming enemy guidance systems, spoofing GPS signals, and disrupting communications cost far less than physical interception. The limitation is reliability. Electronic countermeasures work against some threats some of the time. They fail against hardened systems, autonomous guidance, and adversaries who adapt to known jamming techniques. The mathematics of missile defense have shaped military strategy for 80 years. They will shape the security environment your children inherit. Nations with large missile and drone arsenals hold escalation advantages over wealthier adversaries with expensive defensive systems. Iran leverages this advantage against Israel. North Korea leverages it against South Korea and Japan. Russia leverages it against Ukraine. China calculates its leverage against Taiwan and American forces in the Western Pacific. The cost-exchange ratio does not determine outcomes in isolation. Political will, economic depth, alliance structures, and nuclear deterrence all influence the strategic balance. The mathematics create pressure. They do not predetermine results. Your government faces choices about how to allocate limited resources against unlimited threats. Every dollar spent on interceptors is a dollar not spent on offensive capabilities, economic competitiveness, or domestic priorities. Every choice to defend one region implies reduced defense of another. The official story of April 2024 celebrates technological triumph. Israeli and American systems worked as designed. The skies over Jerusalem remained safe. The coalition held. The ledger tells a different story. Iran spent $100 million. Defenders spent over $1 billion. Iran maintains the production capacity to repeat this exchange. The defenders face finite interceptor stocks and constrained production lines. The mathematics of modern warfare favor the side-building cheap offensive weapons over the side-building expensive defensive systems. This has been true since the V1 fell on London. It remains true today. It will remain true until fundamental breakthroughs in directed energy or autonomous systems change the underlying physics and economics. You pay for this imbalance through your tax dollars. You bear the risk through your national security. You face the consequences in a world where adversaries understand the cost-exchange ratio better than most of your elected representatives. The Iran-Israel war math reduces to a simple equation. A $50,000 drone against a $3 million interceptor is a 60.1 advantage for the attacker. A $100,000 missile against a $15 million THAAD interceptor is a 150.1 advantage. These ratios compound across sustained conflict. Wars are won by nations with the industrial capacity to outproduce their enemies. The side-building weapons cheaply and quickly holds the advantage. The side-building weapons expensively and slowly cannot overcome through technology alone. The numbers do not lie. The numbers do not negotiate. The numbers will shape the wars of the next 30 years. And the numbers say offense wins the economics, even when defense wins the battle.